Cathy here tonight. Cathy is a very well known and respected to many of us in the Arabian horse community. She's a national panel internationally qualified judge who has judged at the highest levels in Australia, including at our most recent Australian Championship show in Borneo. Cathy has held positions with a number of clubs and associations, including committee positions with the Arabian Horse Society of Australia, and she has competed successfully with in a wide range of forums with her horses at Australian Championship level, East Coast, state titles, all with wins to her credit. Now, Cathy has a love and passion for side saddle and all things related to side saddle. She regularly organises side saddle training courses and whenever possible supports riders to learn more about this discipline. Cathy, it's great to have you here tonight, and we really thank you for the time that you've taken with the presentation here and trying to educate us a little bit more about a really unique class and one that we don't always get to judge that often. But when we do, we want to get it right. And that's what we want to hear about tonight is your insights into judging side saddle. So welcome, Cathy.
Thank you, Graham, and thank you to the JOC for inviting me to give a presentation. I've certainly got big shoes to fill tonight after Trevor and Sharon, but so much of what they said is also paralleled in the side saddle world. So I think, and then with our previous speakers from previous presentations, there's that consistent theme of balance, harmony, rhythm, paces that just is through the whole style of horse that we're looking for. So I'll bring up my presentation and we'll go share. Then we will go.
That's good, Cathy.
Yeah, everyone can see it. Okay, so I'm just going to move it off my big screen and pop it here on my smaller screen right in front of me. All right, so first screen, obviously, it's the presentation. So tonight, it looks like we're going to talk about a lot of things, but there's also a lot of information in there that you can do your own inquiries to afterwards. So whether you're interested in the gear side, the Facebook, the international websites, accredited coaches and trainers, there's lots of information for you to go off and do your own learning after tonight. So some of the things we'll be looking at briefly are the history of side saddle in Australia, descriptions of the most common side saddle classes that we as Arabian judges will judge or may get asked to judge when we're at an ag show or doing one of the royal shows. We'll have quite a detailed discussion on correct saddlery and bridle wear and personal appointments. Then we'll go on and have a little look at the ARSA side saddle rules, and they are also mirrored in our performance rules as well. Then we'll go on to look at some different examples of modern side saddles and what to look for in those side saddles, with a big emphasis on safety and inspecting the gear before the class starts for any issues. Then we'll go on to look at judging tips and what to look for. Then we've got links to side saddle makers and renovation specialists in Australia, the side saddle groups on Facebook in Australia, the Australian accredited coaches, and then some links to international Facebook groups and websites. For those of you that love reading, I've put together a suggested reading list, and you can have a look at that in your own time. So the first side saddle came to Australia shortly after the first colonists landed with the English horses. And it was said that Elizabeth MacArthur, when she immigrated from England to Australia, brought with her her side saddles in her trunks, along with all her accoutrements that go with that. With the establishment of a wealthy squatter class and landed gentry, women wanted to show themselves off to their best advantage on their mounts. And due to the high demand for this and the length of time it would take for a side saddle to be sent from the UK, Australian saddle and harness makers decided that they would make their own. By 1830, the leaping head or the leaping...
Excuse me, Cathy.
Sorry.
Sorry. We've got a couple of people saying can you change your slides to match with your talk?
Oh, I'm on the side.
You're still on the first slide though.
I think because you've changed screens, it's not actually showing on your main screen because you changed it to your small screen.
Yeah, you need the screen with the red round it, Cathy. One with the red round it.
Hang on.
Hi, Kez.
No, fine.
There you go.
Perfect. Thank you.
Whoop.
No.
Back to where you were.
Yeah.
Perfect.
That's it.
Perfect.
Okay, so
Please continue.
So are we all seeing the brief history of the side saddle?
Yep.
Right. Yes, so back to the Australian saddle and harness makers and the length of time it was taking for saddles to come from the UK. They just started to design their own saddles. Unfortunately, there was no such thing as a side saddle tree available in Australia in the early days, and the saddlers had their base, the side saddles, on an Australian stock saddle, and out of that became the Australian ladies' stock side saddle. It has a low cut, deep seated poley type seat compared to the English counterpart that was much flatter in the seat and with straight lines through the flaps. And if you look towards the bottom there, you'll see that old carved embossed side saddle. That's a side saddle from the mid to late 1800s that was imported. So you can see straight away the curvature of the seat and the heavy embossing. Motorised transport, as we became more prevalent into the 19th century and with both world wars, the women were riding side saddle much less, and there was a loss of demand, particularly after the Second World War. However, in the last 20 years, we're seeing a gradual resurgence and much increased interest in riding aside, and there are now many local talented saddlers groups and instructors to help you on your path. So you'll see the photo there and it looks quite ungainly, but that is Miss Esther Stace winning the ladies high jump at Sydney Royal in 1915 with a world record of 6'6" at the time. And that's her side saddle there to the right, which is also a similar, the one that I mentioned earlier. So if as a judge you're ever concerned that the side saddle horse cannot do the work of any other saddle performance horse, I must say that you are completely wrong. Everything that can be done astride can be done aside. So we'll move on now and we'll have a little look at the common classes that we will get to judge. So at our Arabian shows, there's generally only the one class, and it will be a lady's side saddle or a youth side saddle. So all side saddle classes in our rule book must be ridden by females. So in the open side saddle class, we're looking for a picture of timeless elegance and finesse. The horse should show with an epitome of manners, obedience, with a balanced, smooth, rhythmical paces. And that just harks back again to what Sharon and Trevor were talking about tonight. The judging criteria for the class is the same as our hack classes. 60% quality, conformation, soundness and presentation, and 40% for manners, paces and education. Unfortunately, we don't often get to judge concours to elegance, but it is a very fun class to judge, and Canberra Royal is one of the few royal shows that actually offers that class. So if you ever get the opportunity to judge at Canberra, make sure that you put your hand up for the side saddle. It's quite a different class in that it's judged from a distance. The key criteria for the class is a look of elegance and harmony between horse and rider. The horse should show good quality paces, a good level of education and obedience. Normally, it is only judged on the ring at the walk, trot, or you may ask for a canter, but it is more about the elegance and harmony between the horse and rider. Period costume is another not so uncommon one, especially in the royal shows. And the aim of this class is for you to give a correct representation of your chosen period in time. It could depict a movie, painting, or period drama, e.g. Downton Abbey, Jane Eyre, anything that you're interested in. What it is not a fancy dress class or a cosplay class. So if we look at that lovely photo of the grey horse as a lady's side saddle, now this one is from the UK, so they have bowler hats. We unfortunately have now lost that ability for bowlers and top hats, and will now wear our safety helmets. But the balance and harmony, the timeless elegance in that picture just says it all. It's been doing the rounds on Facebook for a while, and I just love everything about that horse and the presentation. The period costume, which is taken down here, that's sort of similar to a Jane Eyre or early Downton Abbey. And the Concours d'Elegance picture on the right, again, that is elegance and harmony. So we'll move on now to the next group of side saddle classes. Ladies show hunter. Having had side saddle horse competing for a number of years previously, we would often ask the show committees, would they allow us to compete in the show hunter side saddle? And in every case, the show committee said yes to us. So that was another opportunity to showcase the Arabian versatility in that class. So if you're judging a ladies show hunter class, it's all the same rules as in a stride class. The combination should show bold forward moving paces with an extended canter or gallop shown if the conditions allow. And, you know, as Sharon was speaking, it's always about safety, the going on the ground, where your ring is positioned, particularly at an ag show. You know, you don't often get a good position on a ring, and to do a show hunter workout next to the sideshow alley, you just need to be always mindful of safety. In the show hunter class, jumping is not required. Your judging priorities in a ladies show hunter or youth show hunter are hunter type suitability, conformation, movement, manners, temperament, and education in equal ratios. And as we all know, our purebreds in Australia would struggle to meet the bone criteria for an open hunter. So if I'm presented with some purebreds in the class and everything's equal and my purebred has less bone, that's not a deal breaker. I can place more emphasis on the other priorities that I think that we're going to assess on the day. So you'll see that photo there on the left. That's actually one of the accredited side saddle coaches when she was competing at the in the UK, and that's very much the English style of hunter. So you can see straight up that just about all our horses cannot meet that size and bone requirement, but we can certainly give them a run for their money in work, manners, temperament, and education. The best turned out class, normally you would not ask for them to do a workout. You may ask for them to do a short walk or trot, just so that you can assess the fall of the habit, how it flows or not when the horse is moving. And again, it's similar to our Astride Turned Out class, where we're looking at a third mark for the rider, a third mark for the saddlery, a third mark for the horse, and a final one for the attention to detail. Best presented or smartest on parade. As for best turned out, however, bling, jewelry, decorative brow bands and shark's teeth are all permissible. No workout is required. Then we go on to our youth, and if you're fortunate enough to have a youth separate class, that's fantastic. For me as a judge in a youth side saddle, I place a much stronger emphasis on the manners and paces of a youth side saddle horse or pony. If you have them both in the same class, always be mindful how much space you've got, what your outside influences could be, what's the level of experience of the lowest rider. Don't set workouts that are going to be difficult for the young people to achieve or that could cause confusion. And we'll go on to talk about workouts a little bit later. So that sort of moves us on to correct saddlery and bridle wear. Now, this is taken pretty much straight from our rule book, and I've referred you there to the relevant section. So when we say a modern design saddlery, we're basically looking at anything from 1900 on. It's getting increasingly difficult now as we move on into 2022 from the 1900s, that a lot of these old saddles are actually still salvageable or usable with a lot of renovations. So the modern side saddle can be used with or without a shaped saddle cloth or Wickham pad. Now, some of you may not be familiar with the term Wickham pads. We don't see a lot of them in Australia, but certainly in the UK. What the Wickham pad does, it allows a side saddle to be worn by several different horses. So the Wickham pad is actually padded to suit that individual horse underneath, and then fit the bottom of the channel of the saddle underneath. So you can see there that they've got a suede seat. Now the seats can be suede or leather, and there's no preference for one or the other. Suede will certainly give the rider a better grip, and particularly if they're using gel-seated breeches underneath, that just gives them that little bit of extra purchase. Each saddle must have a safety iron or a stirrup release mechanism. In the event of a fall, then the breakaway stirrup iron will allow you to not be dragged, or the actual stirrup leather will come off underneath at its correct spot. And in the next slide, I've got a photo of that just to show you the difference between them. The girthing system is probably one of the most complicated and fiddly things to get right. So basically we're looking at a minimum 2 buckle with a balance strap. So if you look over to here, you will see that's the balance strap coming down there, which goes on to the girth at an angle. And if we just quickly go back to the grey horse, you'll see there the balance strap coming right down to the side there and onto the Fitzwilliam leather girth there. The purpose of that balance strap is to keep the back of the saddle down and also to help assist prevent it from rolling to the near side. So moving on to the bridles, and this can be really tricky for us at our Arabian shows when we're leaping from ring to ring. You might have been with Sharon doing your Australian pleasure, come out, and you've got to get ready in a hurry for the side saddle class. Our rule book states plain flat leather, and you'll see there on the bay horse that that is exactly what that is. Side saddles are always brown or tan. If you come across a black one, you can guarantee that they're made in India and that they are not safely or correctly made and can cause lots of problems, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. The bridle should always match the saddle, and again, if you were to ride in a black bridle with a brown saddle, black was the traditional colour of death and mourning and funerals. So historically, a lady rider may wear black gloves if she was mourning the death of someone, but it's not something that we would see today. So ideally, the bridle should match the leather of the side saddle, and the brow bands must be of plain flat leather. No plaited leather, no diamante or other showy brow bands can be used. So we'll move on now to talk about what our riders wear. What can we expect them to see in the ring? So the side saddle habit, and that's what we call the outfit that we wear when we're riding a side, should be of a dark colour, tweed or discreet check. Commonly in Australia, we will see navy and black and an occasional tweed. There's a nice photo there of the brown tweed. The habit needs to be sufficiently weighted to stop the apron from billowing around your legs when riding. In the UK and in cold climate countries, that's quite easy because the fabric is usually wool-based, very heavy, and has quite heavy thermal properties. In Australia, we're always looking to cut the heat down. So if you're having a habit made over here or have someone who is skilled with the needle, you may find that you need to put weights in the hem of the skirt to keep it down and flat. The back of the jacket should not touch the back of the horse and should ideally just sit above the cantle. The hem of the habit should be parallel to the ground, and the bottom of the hem should be approximately 1 hand's width above the boot. Breeches must be dark or of a similar colour to the habit. Seeing white dressage breeches or cream show breeches underneath the habit is a big no-no. A little tip that one of our side saddle coaches gave me some years ago was, if you are running from ring to ring, have a pair of pull-on dark coloured tights that you can just quickly pull on over your breeches, and then they won't be seen under the habit. Moving on to boots. Long boots in either black or brown must be worn. It is not uncommon to see a matched short boot on the right foot. Top boots and the angle that you sit on the side saddle with your right leg is often very uncomfortable with the bend at the knee over the horns, and you will find that the long boots cut in. So you can either have your right one cut down or wear a matched pair, one long, one short. A blunt spur or spur band should be worn on the ankle seam of the boot. And I'd already made reference to that. Be aware of habits purchased from cold climate countries, as they're often extremely hot and heavy over here. And sort of that goes a bit back to what Sharon said about the weight of the Western saddles. Side saddles are incredibly heavy. So by the time you have your side saddle and then the heavy woolen worsted habit, you can be really carrying a lot of extra weight. go on now with some more personal appointments. So prior to 2017, it was common practice for us to compete with top hats and veils. However, they're no longer approved, and a current matching or toned helmet that meets the Australian standards with harness must be worn, no veils, which is a shame because I love that whole historical look. You can wear a well-fitting shirt with a tie or a stock in plain colours. The stock should be secured with a straight flat pin. Now, if you have a look at my rider there on the right, you can see she's got the white stock, but her pin is absolutely crooked. And it was quite funny on the day that we took these photos. She had actually bent the pin trying to get it to go in through the stock. So that's why it was bent in the photo. The middle photograph was some years ago when we could wear the silk top hats with the lovely veil. And then the photograph on the left is just the tweed habit with a shirt and tie. Shirt and tie or stock, equally acceptable. Because we're not using a right leg, a cane or a rigid whip of no more than 1 metre must be carried. They can be leather covered, I'm having a tongue tie here, plain or plaited is acceptable. Needless to say that all personal appointments and the horse should be absolutely spotlessly clean. So we'll just go on with a few more little rules. Ridden by a female, judged as a lady's hack. Emphasis on manners, paces, education and beauty. Any disobedience should be heavily penalised. And I've made a note there, see the attached side saddle scorecard. In doing some research for tonight's presentation, I've come across a side saddle scorecard, and I thought, wow, that would really make it so much easier for our judges who are fairly inexperienced to learn the ropes. So I'm in the process of adapting that, and I'll send that through to the JOC for their consideration. And you may find it helpful to get your head around. All right, so we talked about the surcingle and the balance strap. And again, if you look at the horse there on the left, the lady in the top hat, you can see that balance strap and her cane coming down there. So that's a leather plaited cane with a silver ferrule on the top. Now, the next photograph next to her, when I mentioned previously the breakaway stirrup iron, this is a Champion and Wilton style breakaway. So in the event of a fall, that whole mechanism will come off and you will not be dragged. If you don't have a breakaway mechanism underneath the saddle there, your other option is to use any of the breakaway irons. So there's quite a few different variations. The Scott and the Cope, which is name I always forget. These are older style ones, but any modern breakaway stirrup will also suffice in that regard. So we'll move on and we'll have a look at the modern, what I call the post-50s flat seat saddles. We're really quite fortunate in Australia that we've got 3 very good saddlers who are now making brand new custom made side saddles. So we have on the top there, that's a modern side saddle made by Wendy Tidbold, who is a accredited judge and coach and saddler in Queensland. The one to the right is from Ian Lancaster, who is a world-renowned leather and harness specialist. And you can see from those 2 saddles, when we look back at the early 1900s one, the evolution of that much flatter seat and the different padding, the different paneling underneath. And then over to the right, we have the approximately 1920 Champion and Wilton. All the good English saddles will always have hallmarks, silver stamps, they'll have numbers on them, and there is a registry in the UK of saddles, so you are able to do some research and track your own saddle. And having recently bought a 1923 Champion and Wilton for myself, I've now been able to research it back to when it came into Australia, and now I'm on to the next part to find out what lady that it belonged to and who it was made for in the UK originally. Now you'll see down the bottom there, there's a Western side saddle. Now we really don't see them very often. Occasionally we'll have a request. I have a Western side saddle. I'd like to do my side saddle class in it. Again, that would be something for the committee to make a decision on. But again, as a judge, everything that we would be looking for the Western side saddle rider will be able to perform. And the only difference is they would have a skirt instead of their chaps. So moving on to judging tips and guidelines, and I can't stress this importantly enough, and Brian Gagan's not always going to be with us all when we're judging, so that you need to visually inspect the saddlery for safety, security, and compliance with specific class criteria. However, please do not touch the horse or rider at any time, except for the awarding of prizes. Any adjustments to the saddlery or rider should be made by a third party before the class commences. So what you'll find is anyone who's competing side saddle will have a bevy of helpers with them. So if you've got a competent steward, utilise them before the class, get them to check over their gear. If your steward is not competent, get them all in, line them up, look at the gear. If there's an issue at that point, then you would need to speak to the rider and say, I think your girth is loose, your balance strap isn't through its keeper, whatever the issue is, excuse them from the ring whilst they go and make repairs to their, alterations to their gear. Most people though, gearing up is lengthy and complicated, and you will find that the horses are quite tightly girthed, and riders are pretty well organised in the mainstream. Having said that though, we had a balance strap failure at the state championships the very first year we competed. When I got too over adventurous and went to tighten up the balance strap, that one extra hole, and it snapped off right at the cantle. So that was an unforeseen action, but we still won the class. Okay, so our workouts for the side saddle horse are the same as for any other HAP class, whether it be novice, intermediate, open. The horses should all enter the ring at the walk on the right rein. As Sharon said regarding the Western Pleasure, our riders and owners have put a lot of work into getting and a lot of money into getting the side saddle horse into the ring. Give them your full attention and plenty of opportunity to show the horse off to the best advantage. I think the worst thing I ever heard was someone saying, well, that was $5 a lap as they came out from a class. So enter the ring at the walk, followed by trotting on the ring and canter on the ring. Depending on your number of horses, you may, and the space you've got, you may get them to do a change through the middle. And at this, I would ask just for a trot change. The workout that you set needs to be flowing, uncomplicated, and the first strike off should always be to the right so that it shows balance and transitions. Try and consider the level of education of your side saddle horses. If you've been in that ring or at that show for several days judging, likely you've already seen that horse around. So you've got a fair idea of what they're capable of. The judge should be looking for effortless, ground covering, active 4-beat walk. The trot is scopy yet balanced, and the canter should be comfortable for the rider. If you're going to gallop them, you want to make very sure that your ground and all your safety is in place. And I don't really see for us at the moment that we have many horses that we could, or many conditions that we could safely say, yes, we can gallop the horse in this class. So we'll just go on to look at the next section on judging tips and guidelines, which is now more about our rider. So if we look at this lovely rider over here on, I'd say, Dartmoor, something New Forest pony in the UK, you can actually see that she is sitting incredibly straight and square over the back of the horse. And really, you have to look hard to see that the right leg is not even there. That's how balanced she would look. So the rider's weight needs to be evenly distributed through the hips, and the shoulders are square and parallel to the front. The rider must be supple, and the body has to be free from tension and stiffness, so as to not interrupt or interfere with the horse's way of going. The arms should follow the reins and the neck of the horse and the body. They can be held in either the lap of the rider or above the knee. Because you are sitting that little bit further back in the side saddle, often if you're going to use a double bridle, the reins are not long enough, and you will need to get a longer set of reins just because of the position that the side saddle puts you in. The most common fault that we see, apart from not sitting straight, square and balanced, is what we call the naughty right toe. So the right toe or the right foot should always be covered by the habit. So it's a good idea if you're having a habit made, just to make sure that you've got just enough, 3 or 4 inches extra to cover your foot. And the right toe, if it's seen, is considered a serious rider fault. And again, we just go back to that overall picture: harmony, poise, balance, elegance, and that overall appearance of a bygone era for the open classes. So I mentioned earlier that we have a number of skilled saddlers and other associated suppliers of side saddle and side saddle related gear. So I've listed them here for you, and if any of you are interested, you're able to contact them. You'll just notice there, just a little aside, that's a side saddle cover, which makes it so much easier for transporting your side saddles in the car and keeping them clean at the shows. So in Australia, we've got a number of active Facebook groups. Side Saddle Association of South Australia and Victoria are probably the two most leading groups, and have a wealth of information on their Facebook pages and are very willing to share information with you. And as of, I think it's the end of September, we will shortly be launching a Australian Side Saddle Association group. So we will finally have a whole of Australia Side Saddle Association, which will be fantastic. Okay, so I've got a couple of our accredited coaches and judges there. Unfortunately, they are the only 3 that are actually qualified in Australia to coach. However, of course, there are a number of other coaches that have significant experience in that field. And then the next slide just talks about some international side saddle websites and Facebook groups. The New Zealand Side Saddle Association, our cousins across the ditch, where side saddle is incredibly growing and prominent. Their site is absolutely a wealth of knowledge, and I would recommend that you go there and have a read there. And the International Side Saddle Association as well. They're probably the 2 key websites to have a look at. Now, if you're interested in doing some more reading, there's a list there of suitable books. And of course, there's a plethora of information online. I don't know how many of you have been glued to the Paralympics and watching the equestrian. I know we certainly have been the last week or so here. And how thrilled was I to see this lady from Belgium, the lovely Barbara Mancini and Stuart, competing in her grade 3 and freestyle competitions at Tokyo. So I think, you know, it's a wonderful thing and a wonderful, not only for the Paralympic movement, but for us as judges and riders, to see side saddle getting out there amongst it. And that's almost bringing me to the end. And I'd just like to pay, you know, some big thank yous to the Petra, Ian, Erica, Melissa, Wendy, Kerry, Stacey and Greg and Sam Watson for letting me steal all their photos, pick their brains and help put this together. So that sort of pretty much takes me to the end, and I'm hoping people have got questions. I feel like I've rambled a lot.
It's been great, Kath. You haven't rambled. It's there's a hell of a lot of information that you've imparted to us, so thank you for that. I can't see the question, so I might just ask you to drop the screen down and we'll just see whether Helen's got any coming through. One of my thoughts, Kath, it's not really about any particular questions, but I noticed that the UK National Side Saddle Show just had its 40th anniversary last week or a fortnight ago. And basically, you know, it mirrors our Australian Championships in its 40th anniversary. But what blew me away was that they had over 200 side saddle competitors and they had 75 classes over 3 days. Yeah. And I guess it just made me think about potentially what we're missing out on in Australia. I know New Zealand's strong and some other countries are strong with side saddle, but it might be something for show committees to think about and the Arabian Horse Society to think about how we can better promote side saddle. I know show secretaries will say, well, you know, we don't get any revenue out of it, etc. But I still think the potential's there to grow it. As you know, Kath, every couple of years you'll see we'll get good numbers start to come in the side saddle classes and then they tend to wander off again. So I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that in other countries they make it work.
They certainly do. And that lovely big grey horse was at that show that you were speaking about, Graham.
Yeah.
And they have a whole side saddle shopping village that goes with it. Amazing. Was just so jealous looking at all the photos in the live stream. I thought, oh, I just have to go. I have to go. Yeah, yeah, I mean, it's again about encouraging committees, making it easy for them. Ian Lancaster, myself and Petra Mars have been hassling Sydney Royal now for, it would be nearly 10 years, offering to pay all costs to have side saddle back at Sydney, because it's over 30 years now since we had a side saddle class at Sydney. And unfortunately, it just keeps falling on deaf ears. So I think we bring it back in-house and try and encourage our Arabian community to compete and make the timetabling work for them.
Yeah.
And ride side saddle in more classes than just the side saddle class.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of questions here.
Thanks, Helen.
The first one is, I presume the balance strap is only on the right-hand side.
Yes.
Also, would it be possible that someone might compete without a balance strap, i.e. a cheapy saddle?
They all have a balance strap of some description.
Okay, the other one is, can you ask a rider to lift their skirt to check the gear? And can you check for the safety aspects you mentioned before a class starts?
Certainly you can check for the safety aspects, but I certainly would not be asking a rider to lift their habit. I'm not sure what they would be actually trying to see underneath from a safety point of view.
That's the two questions I have so far.
Right.
Kath, it's not really a question, but it's a couple of years ago, I was lucky enough to judge sport horse championships in Austria, and they had traditional side saddle classes there. And when they came into the ring, I thought, oh, I'm going to throw a few people out here because the riders over there have a cane that is about 5 foot long, and they use it to hit cattle, you know, when they're going up through the hills, moving dairy cattle along. So it was, and they all had their beautiful traditional outfits on, you know. So I think as a judge, you just got to be sort of prepared for everything, and especially if you ever get the chance to judge overseas, just double check the rules.
Yeah.
And another really nice memory for me, you mentioned New Zealand. If you can judge at any of the royal shows over there, I think it was Auckland show I did one year, and there was over 15 side saddle competitors that were jumping the hunter course around the outside of the arena. And it's just a beautiful picture. They closed down the show and each lady went around and did their workout, but 6 jumps and serious jumps. They weren't just, you know, a little pole on the ground, but just beautiful classes to judge. I love judging side saddle classes.
I have got another question here. How many points would you deduct for a very uncomfortable looking canter?
You have to make the, you know, you need to define what uncomfortable. Are we talking that the horse is forebeating, uneven? Is the ground rough? Is the horse unbalanced? And then that goes to the level of experience and education of the horse. So it's the same as a hack class.
Yeah. Okay.
So I just wanted to thank you again, Graham, and the JOC for having me speak tonight. If any of you would like the PowerPoint presentation, I'm more than happy to share that with you. And hopefully in 2022, post all this COVID rubbish, I'll be hosting, usually I do 3 series of side saddle clinics over the winter, and judges, you're always welcome to pop in and out and watch and enjoy a glass of wine with us and have lunch, and learn some more about this really wonderful world of aside riding.
Yeah, thanks, Kath. I should have mentioned that too, that you do put on those clinics, and yeah, no, they are much appreciated. I know that I've spoken to some people that really do appreciate what the work you do, and Petra Mars up here in Canberra as well. I know she works closely with you.
Yeah.
But look, thanks for that. It's been a great insight. And Kath, without jumping the gun, I think you're going to be doing an article for our magazine with Kerry Hill.
Yes,
So,
I'm very excited and thrilled to be asked to do that. So any of you out there that have got photos of yourselves riding side saddle, or your horses going side saddle, or great Aunt Mary back in the day side saddle, I'd really appreciate you forwarding them on to me with the little blurb as to what they're about, and hopefully we can make a really interesting and unique article on that.
Okay. Well done, Kath. And as I said, thank you again from everyone. It's been terrific. Certainly learned a lot again. Okay, so look, on that note, everyone, I just wanted to thank you for your attendance at this seminar and the previous 2 seminars as well. I've got to acknowledge the support of Adam, our chairman, and the board. They've been fully behind this 3-part seminar series, and all the JOC members. We couldn't put this together without their support and help. And as I said, Helen and Teresa, and also Tanya Hosking has been helping as well with some of the website uploads. As I keep saying, I enjoyed hearing from our speakers tonight. I always learn something from them, and I hope that you did too as well. Look, personally, I think the 3-part seminar series has been a success. We've had a great mix of speakers. If you look back and reflect on it, we've had 2 internationally acclaimed guest speakers who are breeders, handlers and judges in Joanna and Janet. We had our fantastic vet, Johnny Walker, who literally opened our eyes about judging lameness. And we had a really fascinating sports psychologist in Lisa Stevens, who helped us explore how our body and minds work when we're placed under pressure when judging. And then tonight we've had our 3 great guest speakers. We've had Trevor, Sharon and Cathy taking us literally for a ride through these performance classes of harness, Western pleasure, Australian pleasure, and just now side saddle. I just can't think our guest speakers are enough. They've really made this series work for us. I loved hearing from them all. And I hope that you too took away something and that you had great or valuable learnings from each of the seminar presentations. Last week I mentioned how the whole country is hurting from lockdowns and we're all feeling a bit fatigued and isolated. The board and the JOC are trying to alleviate some of this hurt and isolation, and we will continue to try and run these seminars and keep you connected through these Zoom seminars in the coming months. They do require a lot of work, and there's a fair bit of coordination goes into them and in getting them off the ground. But as I said, the board has been really supportive. The JOC want them to go ahead, and we're trying to provide them as a service to you during these times. So look, on that note, thank you everyone. Stay safe. And we hope to all see you at one of these seminars soon, but we also hope to see you at a real live horse show somewhere down the track. Thanks everyone. Good night.